Hey, I'm going to try it again. Good evening, my name is Jai. This is the Winter Feast for the Soul 40-day meditation practice. Today this is number day 27, and I'm going to be sharing with you all another 17 Name of God meditation practice. Another 17 Name of God meditation using the 17 names. And basically, again, this is the Winter Feast for the Soul 40-day meditation practice, and we're almost done. We're on day 27. We're more than halfway through the meditation. We're coming close to the end of it. And so if anybody wants to choose a card between 1 and 72, that'd be great. Otherwise, I will go ahead and choose one. So we're going to shuffle the deck. And again, for those of you that is the first time tuning in, what the 17 Names of God is, it's a sequence of Hebrew letters that there's a total... I always want to show, because sometimes we get new people. But anyway, this is the 17 Names of God. Okay, this is 17 Names of God. And the 17 Names of God, hey Melissa, if you want to pick a card, you can. Anyway, the 17 Names of God is it's this. There's 72 Hebrew letter combinations. And each one of these have a different energy that connects us to the creative source. It's 1272, and where this can be found is within the Torah, or the 5 books of Moses, and it's actually within the book of Exodus. And within the book of Exodus, there's a portion in there where Moses uses these particular names of God to achieve mind over matter. And one day I'll go ahead and go into more with that, but again, so that's where we get the 17 Names of God from. Again, there are different Hebrew letter combinations that allow us to achieve mind over matter in different areas of our life, whether it's prosperity, love, negativity, perseverance. Really, there's many different aspects and many different ways to use these. And some people call them 17 Names of God. Some of them might say there's 72 angels, 72 aspects. But the bottom line is, though, these are different energies that we can connect to achieve mind over matter. So the card that I'm going to be choosing today, unless someone wants to choose a card between 1 and 72, while I'm shuffling. Let's see. Okay, so the letter, or the card that I'm going to be choosing is freedom. So we're going to connect to the energy of freedom with this particular card. So this is the card that connects to the energy of freedom. Okay? This is the energy of freedom. The name of this card is MEM ZADIK RESH. MEM ZADIK RESH. MEM ZADIK RESH. And again, that connects to the energy of freedom. So let's see what the 17 Name of God book says about that particular card. And that is actually number 60. The 17 Names of God. Freedom. So what does it mean to connect to the energy of freedom from a Kabbalist perspective? As we begin to transform our lives and experience true fulfillment, we are tested again and again. Each test of our ego injects doubt. The optimism and excitement we felt at the start of our journey vanishes. We start to complain and the ego is back. So, you kind of maybe find that whenever we start something fresh and new, we start things with a new energy, right? We start things very excited. A lot of times as we progress into our practice, we start to take things for granted, or we start to get a little bit lazy, or it's not so new anymore, so we kind of take it for granted in a way. So that's what this is talking about. And that's when the ego comes back into play. Whenever we start to get into that state of non-appreciation, of not being grateful for the practice, of just kind of, taking it for granted, that is the ego coming back to test us, to challenge us. Okay? So what else it says? As slaves and children of slaves, the people of Israel were in bondage in Egypt for 400 years. Then came Moses, sent by the Creator. He won freedom for his people. Then he led them on a long, arduous journey, including that famous passage through the Red Sea. Eventually they reached Mount Sinai, where they had a date with destiny. Strangely, however, the Israelites began complaining as soon as they escaped from bondage. They even begged Moses to lead them back into Egypt. How could this be possible? Was the journey through the desert worse than 400 years of slavery? Kabbalah offers a startling explanation for this. The entire story is a code. It is a veiled narrative of individual spiritual transformation. Let's decipher the code. Egypt refers to the human ego, the oldest slave master in history, our ego. And any aspect of our nature that controls us is Egypt. Egypt also denotes the seductive trappings of the material world. The moment our spiritual path becomes challenging or uncomfortable for the ego, we long to return to our own personal Egypt. That is to the lower level of being that we've grown used to. So it's pretty much it. So when we find ourselves in a challenging situation, the ego oftentimes wants us to go back to a place of comfort. Because sometimes the comfort is something that we're used to. So, whenever we go on a spiritual journey, it is sometimes very challenging. We face our biggest fears, we face our demons, we actually face ourselves. And sometimes it's scary when we face ourselves. So what do? We sometimes get frightened and we go back to the place of comfort. And that's what this is talking about. We sometimes want to go back to our Egypt, back to the comfort zone. Okay. The path to transformation requires self-knowledge and personal accountability. It's not easy. We're constantly tempted to turn back. Escaping from spiritual bondage means liberation from the enslavement of our own former selves. So this particular card gives us the power to break the bondages of our ego. It gives us the power that connects us to the energy of freedom, to again overcome the bondages of our ego, of being a slave to our ego, to being a slave to the material world, and keeps us from wanting to curl back into our comfort zone. So that's what the energy of this name gives us. And again, this name is MEM ZADIK RESH. And interesting in here, they talk about the escape of Egypt. They're talking about that in this particular text. They talk about, when Moses brought the Israelites out of Egypt and they started crossing the desert, they came to that point of the Red Sea. Well, that's actually where these whole entire 17 names of God come into play. Because it's that particular portion where these are revealed. The 17 names of God, this technology is revealed in that particular portion in the book of Exodus. When Moses was approaching the Red Sea, he found that he had the Egyptians behind him, coming toward him, and he had the Red Sea in front of him. So what can he do? What can you do at that point? You either go back, into the hands of the Egyptians and go back into slavery, or you walk into the Red Sea and possibly drown. So at this point, he actually reached out to the Creator. He said, Creator, what can I do? Please help us. Please give us a miracle. We're being attacked by slaves. Why did you have me, bring all the slaves out of Egypt to lead us to our death? And then the source, Creator, uttered back to Moses, saying, Moses, why do you cry to me? Everything that you have to create miracles is within you. And that is where these come into play. These are the technology that allows us again to achieve mind over matter. It's our connection, direct connection to miracle making. And this is within the Torah. These 72 names are buried, coded within that particular portion of the Torah, or the 5 books of Moses. But it's hidden there. If you read it, you wouldn't see it. You would not see it unless you knew how to decipher that code. And one day I'll I've been saying that a couple of times during these meditations. One day I'm going to have a class and a workshop, and I'll share with you guys the whole technology of the 17 names of God. It's very, very beautiful, and the Torah is it's a code book basically. It's a code book that has a bunch of different secrets within it. So anyway, so that's what we're connecting to, and to read what the meditation again says for this particular name. I perceive the balance and harmony that fills all creation, especially in the hardships, challenges, and tests that I now must face throughout life. With the power of this name, I arouse the strength to pass all those tests, to rise to a higher level of being, and to gain the joy and fulfillment that accompany true spiritual transformation. I unlock the chains of ego and achieve freedom. So again, that's what the power of this name holds. So as we're meditating on this particular name, as we're chanting this name together tonight, I want you to go in deep within yourself, and think about whatever challenge right now you currently have in your life. Whatever big test is in front of you, whatever challenge, whatever it is that's holding you back, whatever shackles you're chained to right now that's keeping you from moving forward. As we're chanting this name, I want you to just visualize you breaking those bondages, breaking those chains, and hurdling the obstacle, crashing through the wall, whatever it is that you need to do to get on the other side of that challenge, to get on the other side of that obstacle. And again, we're going to use that name this evening to do it. And again, we're going to be playing the melody from the 17 Names of God Sound Healing CD that my friend Ari, he composed. What's interesting is he took all of these different Hebrew letter combinations. This is actually, this music has nothing to do with the Kabbalah Center, believe it or not. I mean, this book here, the 17 Names of God, was written from Yehuda Berg, which is the son of Rav Berg, who was the dean of the Kabbalah Center, and they're the ones who wrote this book, and they shared this technology with us. But my friend Ari, who's a musician, I don't know really how it came about, but one night he was experimenting. He was on his computer, and he was trying to compose some music, and what he did is he actually programmed these different Hebrew letter combinations into a computer, and what was produced was these songs, or these different melodies right here. So this is sound healing. This is sound healing that allows our cells to vibrate. Our cells are very receptive to this music, to the sound, because this is sacred sound music. You're taking Hebrew, which is a very sacred language, it's a high vibrational language, and it's producing music. And the reason why this is such a powerful language, I don't know if you guys have ever heard the Torah being read. And I attend Shabbat every Saturday morning, and whenever I listen to the Torah, it sounds like they're singing a song. As they're reading the Torah, it really literally sounds like a song. As they're reading it, they're reading the whole entire portion for the week, and it sounds so beautiful. It sounds like a music. And as they're reading the Torah, we're listening to it. We're listening to that music, and our cells are receiving that high vibrational music. And then we're scanning the Bible. We're scanning the Torah. So we're scanning the letters with our eyes. Okay, so our eyes are receiving the energy from these letters, from the Hebrew letters, which again are high vibrational letters. And then we're listening to it, and our cells are just receiving this. So this is powerful sound healing for the soul. But now tonight, we're going to be chanting this name, MEM ZADIK RESH. We're going to be listening to the melody that's produced by these particular letters. And we're really going to go deep. We're going to go deep, and we're going to be listening to some very, very powerful sound healing for the cells, for the soul. And we're going to just create some transformation in our lives by chanting this particular name. Okay? So let me go ahead and song going. This is a melody. So this is produced. This particular name, MEM ZADIK RESH, these particular Hebrew letter combinations, when they were programmed into the computer, this song was produced. listen, close your eyes and listen to this. Just receive this melody. It's not very long, it's like maybe only a minute long. Just listen to the beauty of how that sounds. Beautiful. Now we're going to chant this name as we continue playing this melody over and over and over again. Okay, so we're going to do this for 11 minutes. So sit up nice and tall. Sit nice and tall with your back straight. You sit in an easy pose, rock pose, or in a chair. I want you to close your eyes. Make it visualize the shackles, the chains that are holding you back from moving forward, from the transformation that you want to seek in your life. Imagine breaking those chains. And imagine whatever hardship, whatever challenge, whatever trial, whatever difficulty right now that you're being tested with, just visualize yourself on the other side of that test. Visualize achieving and overcoming that obstacle or that challenge. And just see how much light will be revealed in your life and in the life of those around you once that challenge is overcome, once that test is passed. And just see how much light will be revealed in your life. So don't ever give up. Keep pushing, keep persevering, keep moving forward, continue crossing your desert. And when you reach your Red Sea, call upon your inner strength to part the Red Sea, so you can cross your Red Sea. And we're going to begin chanting. Again, it's MEM ZADIK RESH. And if you'll notice when I'm chanting this, it kind of sounds like I'm singing it. Why? Because music is the language of the angels. And angels, whenever they speak, they're singing songs. MEM ZADIK RESH. 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 Breathe in. Hold the breath. Pull up root lock. And exhale. Breathe in again. Hold the breath. Pull up root lock. And exhale. One last time, breathe in. Hold the breath. Pull a root lock. And as you're sitting here, as you exhale as you break through your bondage. Exhale, breaking off the chains. Exhaling, releasing all the obstacles that keep you from moving forward. And what is the biggest obstacle? It isn't the exterior challenge. It has nothing to do with the exterior challenge. The exterior challenge is nothing. What keeps us from moving forward is the biggest obstacle, and that is our ego. Our own personal Egypt, our own ego. That is really what keeps us from moving forward. All these external obstacles, challenges, tests, they're nothing. Once we step out of our own way, once we put to bed our ego, that is when we can actually truly accomplish all of our goals, all of the tests, all of the obstacles, and that is when we're able to break our chains and shackles. Is when we overcome the illusion of the ego. The ego is the biggest test. The ego is the biggest challenge. The ego is the biggest obstacle that keeps us from our destination. It's what keeps us from crossing over our desert. It's what keeps us from crossing the Red Sea. It's what keeps us from moving forward into our greatest self. It's the ego. Once you put the ego aside, or once you transform the ego, we don't have to get rid of the ego. We can just transform the ego. Make the ego work for us rather than against us. That is when we'll truly break our shackles. So now just see yourself moving forward past any obstacle and challenge on the other side of the wall. You're already there. It's already happened. Just step into that reality. Step into that truth. Step into that now. Thank you so much for being with me. Again, my name is Jai. I'm a Kundalini yoga instructor, massage therapist, an Ayurvedic practitioner, and a sound healer, and a student of Kabbalah. And I want to thank you all. Thank you very much for joining me. Jolene, Melissa, thank you so much for joining. Hope you have a wonderful night, and Sat Nam. Good night.